What's going on, guys? Zz here, and today's video is going to be a lot different. This is a video that I meant to do months ago, and I kept promising BASSFZz Fleet I would do the video, and I never got around to it, so that's my bad. That's my fault. I started doing lots of different other videos, and it kind of got lost. And so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to read the script he gave me. There's going to be zero input from me. This is all going to be 100% from Chaos. So if you see BASSFZz Fleet in the comment section, as always, give him a thumbs up, tell him thanks, compliment him, tell him he did a fantastic job, whatever. This is going to be 100% him. Only thing I'm going to add in is the sound of my voice. Without further ado, let's get into Not All Men Part 2.
Hadn't been made. I was also trying to say that when a generalization is made, it's sometimes from a place of real hurt and pain. But I wasn't trying to say that that means it's justified. It's just that when someone's upset, they sometimes might say things they don't mean, or are too brash, or they word things incorrectly because they're just upset.
No, you said for women it comes from a place of hurt, not for men. You also went on to mock problems that men had, such as downplaying the friend zone, and then putting importance on things that happen to women. You also went on to say that problems women have come from the hands of men, never from other women. And again, we have the whole male predator, female victim complex.
I'm also annoyed that I cut the next clip out of my last video in order to save time, because it might have clarified a few things. If she's just like, oh, just because they are, then maybe step away from that conversation. I wasn't trying to say that generalizations don't come from a place of hurt and pain for men too, or that the only reason they're upset is a lack of sex.
If that was true, then you would have said something along the lines of, people can say things that come from a place of hurt. Instead, you said women. You specified women as coming from a place of hurt and men complaining about X because they're sexist. If you do believe that both men and women can speak from a position of hurt, you would not demonize men by showing only the negative side of men, aka sexism and misogyny, and only the good side of women, aka they were hurt and are victims. If both men and women can complain about X, and both can come from a place of hurt, then you should not separate the two when it isn't needed. As said above, using people instead of women or men if it affects both genders.
I was using the example of the UCSB shooter as an extreme example of the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to making generalizing statements about the opposite sex, and to show that the two do not even compare to each other. However, my mistake was that in trying to keep the video short, I only used those two examples, so it kind of came across like I was saying all girls are just totally hurt and all guys are evil and just want sex, and that's really not what I was trying to say, and I'm really sorry that it didn't come out right. So honestly, I don't think it's fine for girls to be like, oh, boys suck, and boys to be like, oh, I can't say anything because meh. I really should have elaborated on that, and I'm really sorry I didn't, and didn't notice it in the edit either. The cookie analogy! Oh god, everyone loved that one. The cookie analogy is not perfect. I totally agree with everyone on that. It can be misunderstood, twisted, and misused for really bad reasons, usually against minority groups. The problem with this analogy is that some people can use it to say, well, some black people are criminals, so I'm gonna stay away from black people, or well, some Muslims are terrorists, so I'm gonna stay away from Muslims. However, the problem is that these people are using the analogy on a micro level to look at little groups whilst not looking at the wider picture. In truth, white people and black people are just as likely to commit certain crimes, it's just that black people are more likely to be sent to prison for it, especially in America.
I didn't realize Germans were a minority, or that Muslims were a minority, and that's just coming from the comment section alone. The Nazi Party was made up of almost all Germans, and yet only around 10% of said Nazis had anything to do with the genocide of the Jewish people, along the mass murder of communists, the disabled, and homosexuals. It's a garbage analogy since it only allows you to use a minority to justify discrimination against the majority. If 10% of men are killers, why are you going to discriminate against the other 90% of men that would never even think of murdering a person and not find out who the 10% is that are murdering people and deal with the murderers instead of making such a piss poor analogy that covers all men?
And in terms of Muslims and terrorism, if you actually look into the statistics, it's a very particular group and subset of Islam, so it would be kind of like saying that all Christians are like the members of the Westboro Baptist Church. If people choose to misuse this analogy, it says more about the problems with them than with the analogy.
The point wasn't to be accurate. The point was to show that you can't use X% to discriminate against Y group for whatever reason. You can only imagine and blame a minority for something the majority of people will never do in their lives. Rapists and serial killers are a minority in society, yet people are trying to use the 10% figure to then demonize all men by saying, since X men are serial killers and rapists, you should be cautious of all men. It's also funny how you try to discredit the Muslim example because of how few Muslims are terrorists, yet don't seem to understand how few men are rapists. The actual number is less than 6% of men are rapists, which is definitely not a majority of men.
And I think a lot of people's fears about people using this analogy to discriminate against men or any other group, it comes from their misunderstanding of the analogy as a whole. See, there's one vital part that all these people have missed. What is being used to represent men in this analogy? Cookies, M&Ms, any kind of delicious foodstuff that we want to eat. See, this analogy is saying we want to be next to the cookies, we want to be next to the M&Ms, we want to eat you all up because you're so lovely, nom nom nom. It's not designed to be used by people who just say, yeah, I'm not going to talk to guys ever again, because part of the analogy is they are something that we want. Whether that be as friends, as more than friends, as work colleagues, as teammates or anything, we want to be next to you because you're cool. Okay. What people are trying to get across when they use this analogy is that women and also transgender people, when they see the plate of cookies or the bowl of M&Ms, they would like nothing more than to just dive in and just enjoy your company as guys. But sadly, we can't blindly and automatically and implicitly trust every man that walks into our lives, however long or briefly.
So, because around 5.5 to 6 men are rapists, you're now just going to be cautious of every man and treat every man as a potential rapist? Using that twisted logic, men should never leave another mother alone with her child since she is most likely to commit child abuse. Those are just 2 crimes. Now try to factor in assault or burglary, extortion, theft, arson, domestic violence, kidnappings, and so on and so forth. You'd end up being afraid of every other person on the planet since they're all committed by minorities, not majorities. AKA most people are not criminals, but you're going to end up treating most people like criminals anyway, due to the minority of people that are criminals.
The analogy is not being used to justify discrimination against men, it's just being used to explain why women are cautious.
By discriminating against men and treating each other as a potential rapist.
Why are women cautious, you may ask? Well, it could be the fact that overwhelmingly the perpetrators of crimes against women are men. We're cautious because as soon as we hit 13, we start being given advice on how not to get raped. Watch your drink, don't go home alone at night, don't get in an unlicensed taxi, don't get in an empty train carriage, wear shoes you can run in. Welcome to uni, here's a free rape alarm.
The overwhelming majority of victims of crime are men. Should men then fear and be cautious of all men that then commit crimes against other men? Should men fear women that commit crimes against men? Women usually learn how not to get raped, and men usually learn how not to get beaten to death. Both genders are going to be the victims of different crimes, some more than others for certain genders. Just because women are taught to defend against rape doesn't mean women are suddenly meant to fear men. Just because men are taught to defend themselves, and sometimes usually their families, does not mean that they should walk around hating everyone on the planet that could potentially make the man a victim of a crime. Also, since men are more likely to get raped in the United States, shouldn't people be more upset about the fact that only women get taught how to defend against rape and not men, even when more men are likely to be the victim of rape? It is a societal problem, not a gender problem, yet women are taught how to defend against rape while men are not.
We're cautious because people who study and deal with these crimes tell us to be cautious. If you want to be mad at someone for the situation that we're in, be mad at the arseholes out there creating the statistics that mean that most perpetrators of most crimes are male. And that includes crimes against dudes. Don't be mad at women who do have genuine reason to be worried about their personal safety.
Which the whole point of Not All Men is supposed to make you focus on actual male criminals. But do go on. Also, you exclude female criminals.
Especially since if a woman does let her guard down and something happens to her, she can be criticised just as much, if not more, than her actual attacker. There have been too many cases of girls getting blind drunk around guys who have then sexually assaulted them, only for people to turn around to the girls and say, well, why were you drinking around boys? I don't know, maybe they trusted them and don't assume that all guys are potential rapists?
The same thing never happens to men because what exactly? Anyway, if someone goes to a bar and gets blind drunk and then goes home with a stranger, how safe does that sound exactly? If you get drunk, especially alone, you are a lot more vulnerable than with a group of friends and sober. That's just how it works. Predators usually look for helpless victims who are almost always alone, so the critics in this case are asking, why would you put yourself in a vulnerable position knowing full well that this is the kind of victim a rapist is looking for in the first place? Not very many people are saying in this instance, you deserve to be raped. Instead, they're asking why you would put yourself in a compromising position knowing what kind of consequences can happen in said position.
Now, some people said that I was a little bit hypocritical in my last video because whilst I was criticising not all men, I kind of did a thing that came across like I was going not all feminists when I was saying about those particular radical, scary feminists that actually hate men and saying they're a really small minority. And you know what? That does come across as a little bit hypocritical, so I would like to alter what I said there and actually say I would not call them feminists.
So, you admit to being a hypocrite. Also, no true Scotsman fallacy.
From what I have studied and read, feminism is about equality between the sexes. It's about lifting women up to the same level as men, and also this thing which I've spoken about before in my feminism video, in that while bringing women up to the same level, you also see kind of the imbalances on the male side, and you lift them both up and everyone is just happier and yay!
You might believe that, but what you believe does not mean the majority of feminists feel the same. As stated before, check out Jezebel or many other feminist sites which demonize men on a regular basis. If feminism was also for equality, such acts as the Violence Against Women Act would not still be defended by many feminist groups.
Branches of feminism that go men, women, I don't think are very feminist spaces.
No true Scotsman.
Finally, I was not trying to say that men defending themselves from generalization was totally wrong and evil and You're allowed to defend yourselves. I was just annoyed at seeing this phrase, not all men, come up when there was no defending needed. You would see people using the phrase, not all men, even when someone had not specified the gender that they were talking about. One example was a girl saying, I hate being catcalled, and someone replied, not all men. This girl hadn't said or implied that it was men doing it, it was the not all men person that did.
Trolls.
People were just using this phrase, being overly defensive and using it to derail discussions that needed to be had. To me, the phrase not all men does not help a discussion, and it does not help men. It doesn't show anything, it just states something and expects people to believe it. It's much more powerful if you are just cool people and keep doing what you're doing if you're a nice person. Like, seriously, you don't have to say not all men. Like, feel free to defend yourselves and prove yourselves to be cool people. Just don't use that bloody phrase, because, oh my god, I'm sick of seeing it being used by just total assholes and stuff. So, yeah.
Actually, it does have a point. To tell people not to generalize all men and focus on the actual culprit of an issue. Any phrase, any word, any simple thought can be used to derail any kind of conversation about anything from putting sugar on porridge to issues on nuclear war. The issue is not the term not all men, the issue is the people that abuse any kind of term or actively try to derail conversations, aka trolls. If someone says that men are rapists, you can bet your arse that there will be people saying not all men. And it will be said time and time again, whether you're sick of hearing the phrase or not. Well guys, that was the end of her video, and subsequently the end of ours. As always, again, thank BASSFZz Fleet for providing the script. Okay, once again, everything that was said in today's video came from him except the intro and the outro. That was me. So, yeah. So, guys, as always, if you like this video, please go ahead and click that like button. Go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, have a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.